My name is Maggie Zarowski. I am the Interim Director of Creative Writing, and I'm very happy to see you all. We did not expect that so many of you would come out tonight, but it's great to see that you've created a fire hazard for poetry and literature. That's wonderful. So welcome to all our new students. The way that tonight is going to work, we're going to have a non-new student come up to introduce one of the new students. And this non-new student will, before reading a short bio, offer one piece of advice from their experiences of graduate school thus far to the new graduate class. So thank you all for coming out to celebrate our wonderful class. We have 10 new people entering our program, which is one of the largest cohorts we've ever had. We're all very excited. We had, I would say, one of the best batches of applications I've ever seen. And it's wonderful that 10 fantastic writers have come to join our program. So we're all very excited about this event. And I'm just going to make three reminders, probably four. First reminder, tip your servers. Second reminder, Jamie Mays and Aruni Kashyap, who is now going off to Harvard to write a novel for a year, worked very hard at making this annual report for last year. Many of you, is the new class in here? No. Then all the non-new students will be featured in here. So please, you can look at these reports up in the back of the bar there, grab one. And also, we are anticipating the arrival of our newest faculty member, Chikozi Obiyama. He's delayed because he's busy being famous. But he will. There'll be a book launch party for him at Cine on September 12th. So we hope that you all come out for that. Fourth announcement is an event for Spotlight on the Arts. Andrew Zawacki and I will be putting together a day-long, two-event day of poetry and translation. So in the morning, late morning, we'll have a panel of poets who also translate, talking about that practice and how it relates to their own writing. And then in the late afternoon, those three poets will be reading. We have two confirmed poets, and we're still waiting for the third, so I will keep this all a secret from you. But I will entice you by saying that one of them is one of our alumni from the CWP program, so we're very excited about that. And without further ado, I hand you over to Eric for our first introduction.
So I've had the pleasure of actually meeting this reader that I'm going to be introducing, because I want to say that it's a very large cohort and I have not met everyone. So when I say I've had the pleasure, it is a pleasure. I'm going to introduce her. Joann Yu is a painter, a puppeteer, an educator, and a person who finds consolation in words. Her interests and intersectional experience of nationality and class fuel her creations of strange narratives that some readers describe as feeling uneasy or surprising. So, and then I have to share one bit of advice, right? Okay, it should be like, I don't know, keep it real, but also I can't say anything that my professors would judge me about. Okay, have a hobby during the PhD. That's my one bit of advice. Joann.
Thank you for the introduction. I was born in the seaside town where the oldest jellyfish manufacturing factory existed. Both of my parents worked at a local bank and had a rigorous work schedule, so For most of the time, in memory, I was left alone at home. It was a wooden cabin we lived in. But all I remembered was a lead printed line from a yellowing poster on the east northern wall of the living room that read, "How many bodies are we?" and a small patch of sea view behind the twisted trees. As an excellent swimmer, I once almost drowned in the salty water next to a cliff where the grown-ups forbade the children to play around. Eddie was there too. He watched my foot slipping from a moist, algae-covered rock and tipping off balance. Then, in a loud but muffled splash, the water engulfed my scream. My parents did not scold me, despite me being immediately charged with anxiety in the hospital bed after coming back from unconsciousness. Eddie told me that it was because the grown-ups believed that God wouldn't like them scolding children during the turning around of New Year. It would bring them bad luck if they did. So my father simply ignored me, and my mother walked me home in silence. A few days after, for hours I had lesson, Eddie, turning into a tomato with his raging eagerness, feeling that blood-charged face, could not persuade me to go to the sea again. He asked me over and over, intermittently between small chats, like he had to pretend that it was some sort of natural desire, that I was a coward if I refused to play by the water. "No," I said. "I just don't want to go." Since no one talked to me seriously that day after the incident, I will never tell anyone what I saw under the water. There were tales of the underwater sea rulers in town. Most people saw it as an anecdote that the old fishermen made up to boast about their journeys around the table so that they could swing up their beer mugs high and laugh away their fears. "It had 8 legs," they said, "to drag you and suck you tight to its sticky, gooey body." No one seen its face, but they all agreed that its eyes had to be bigger than the wagon's wheel. "So what was the reason?" Eddie asked. "You used to love water." Since I decided to tell no one about the recurring memories of being rowed underwater by the waves, I told Eddie that it was because I didn't like to play with him anymore. He laughed, like the sailors. Though he tried to camouflage it tightly with his body, a seed of belief sprouted. Eddie and I never talked again after that. Not in years. Not even when we ran into each other at a fish market in Seattle just now. He stood still in front of a vendor, examining the blood-filled eye of a dead fish. I could never name fishes like the others back in my hometown because that part of me, including the ability to swim, was washed away in the ebbing sea. I knew Eddie knew what kind of fish he was staring at, but I, like him gazing at the fish, stood there still and watched him in silence. No one knows. There was nothing I could recall more lucidly, even the scene of Eddie and the dead fish, than that flooding blackness. There was no way to capture how I experienced it. Ineffable. It was a scene of being welcomed by the water, like going back to a place I belong, rocking me back and forth, like how I imagined a mother would rock a cradle, except that I am only a critter under the current. I had no way to fight back, except to accept what felt like an infinite equanimity.
I'll start with my piece of advice. So I would say to get some rest, or your body will do it for you. Okay, and I'm introducing Daniel. Daniel Barnum grew up in New England that was finally aged in Philadelphia. They're happy to be here. Welcome, Daniel.
Hi. Can you hear me okay? I'm going to read 3 poems. This is called The Hunting Party. You call what you do, wandering the earth. No one has known you as well as the you in the dream has. Driving sunrise, surveying your many surfaces and tendencies. Holding the spare image of keys from that sign on the front door of the Labyrinth store. The place where your journey begins. In your mind, like a melody. Outside, the landscape of fear is assembling into brief vistas. Other places kept far enough away not to worry about. Your neighbor, whoever that lady in white is, what did she shout to you the other night? The unknown coachman singing to her while she walked the town peninsula, following a pilgrim's map. Once you supposed beauty was the dream, spirit forming beyond that which is nature's. The way back trails its thread behind you, a red fact. Oh, I should say I'm a poet who demands applause between poems. So, that's the way to do it. Thank you. Thank you. This is called In Nature There Is No Death, Only a Reshuffling of Atoms, which is a line from a TV show, Top of the Lake, which is a great show, if you remember. Too true and easy to say on television. TV is inorganic, though, just waves, reshuffling channels out of death called static. Can resurrect ancestors and murder victims, one and the same, on subatomic levels. Watch planet Earth again instead of staying outdoors longer. You'll never see polar bears in nature. They are definitely dying. Soon, they'll beat you to it. Don't worry. They won't know till it's already happened. In your 60s, maybe older, showing their pictures to kids of kids you had to prove a point or prolong inevitability. Tell them all 100 stories about ice animals. And David Attenborough will be dead too by then, which is to say, particulate. Nothing on earth will be left to do them justice, not lullabies or zoologists. Even they can't stop speech from dissolving. In heat, sound moves differently. Air quickens to pitch molecules together, can split them apart when necessary. Matter solved for energy accounts exactly for the loss. Thanks. This is the last thing I'll read. This is called The Celestial Vestry. It has a running title, so the title becomes the first line of the poem. The Celestial Vestry was a book that stood thin on a low wood shelf at my father's house throughout my childhood. I mistook it for truth. Stars were animals that died, but didn't, then lived forever in the night. Heavens above. Which end up was my upbringing? Before I was a thought, it was assumed my parents would never want me. An accident, or as my grandma phrased it once over her glass of Merlot, I was 16. There had been others. I'd figured this out years before, but didn't want to steal her thunder. No revelation granted. That word's definition splits with context. Some new vision, or the very last thing anyone will see. Like how assumption makes you an ass, or sends you straight to God without the facts of death to intercede. How else did the two bears and all those beloved hunting dogs get set in the sky when God was not involved? I could tell my parents didn't know the answer. Now I've lost any chance to ask. I stole those double meanings back there from the Bible, which is a text no one really needs to read. But have you ever come across a copy of the title mentioned in this title, The Celestial Vestry? I haven't, since I stopped believing. Seems impossible. Maybe I made it up. Maybe if I were to find one, it would feel like going home, like meeting my own God, which is just a word for whatever you want, but also for what wants you. Thank you.
From now on, if you're an old grad student, please introduce yourself. Sorry, I thought y'all knew.
Hi, everybody. So 2 pieces of advice. One that you are likely to take, and the second one you are likely to overlook. The first one is don't be scared to ask for help from anybody. The second one, always bring your food. So it's my pleasure today to introduce Andy Nicole Bowers, who is the author of the chapbook Vulturing, published by the Factory Olo Press in 2019. She holds an MFA in poetry and an MA in art history from University of Massachusetts Amherst. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the stage.
Here comes the moment where I have to adjust the mic for a hobbit. Okay. Vulturing. All morning I have watched them strip the carcass of a doe, this black-frocked rabble gathered at the first inkling of spoil, crews of shuffling roughnecks taking shifts at her unrigging, heads red-slathered, hooking into windpipe, cheek, and tongue, then wings cuffing the fly-thick air as several take to blasted scrub oaks, striking attitudes heraldic, cragged, wide-flung to the sun, archaic instruments of clay fired chaste in noon's white kiln. What kind of hunger drives a mind to ply this dire tableau? What eyes have I been given that I scavenge charnel ground, at home among the rifling wake, impenitent, unshriven, for tatters I might piece into a self-consoling song? Thank you. I was trying to decide what to read next, but I appreciate the encouragement. Taxidermy. To repeat the child's misunderstanding of beauty, beauty as adorning object, beauty as possession, as if it were the dress that drove the light to fawn about your mother's form. As if she could unfasten it and exit, you could step into that blue silk and be wooed. To hunt inside the forest, not in hunger, not for sport, but because you covet what you know can't leave the body. Still, the way a fox in flight becomes the memory of brush fire, the winter a lynx enters when she moves, her glacial shadows, black vigil in a crow's eye, stark adagios of deer. To kill, but not to damage. To take the body from its skin, to soak the skin, to sculpt, to suture. To carry what you make across the threshold, heavily as if you swam in silk, moth-eaten blue. Beauty as inheritance withheld. Beauty as a ghost that will not touch you. In moving here, I had to throw out some really cool taxidermy, which was tragic because I left it packed up in my garage in Augusta for too long and it started getting really stinky, so R.I.P. Still life with dead game. This image dispossesses you of power, strips you of the armor of disgust. Pursuit inverts. Now hunger is a force that stands outside you, hunter glassing you from some far hill. How dizzying the stacked feast drawing you against your will, palate slickening as you lean closer. How rank and yet how beckoning this opulence of oils, drunk colors rigged for you like lures, peacock, canary, buckskin, dove, the wound, the shock, the headlong pitch, your mouth flooding metallic. And now you write the stag's flank, undulant with candlelight, autumnal, wheat field oceanic in its burning. The swan poured out as cream from butcher's slab to earthen floor. Hushed velvet of strung rabbits, pheasants' necks tremblous with jewels. What is left but to submit, mind seized in birdlime, outmaneuvered, to offer up the word you tried to hold back, which is beauty, which is to make a hymn, to grieve, to feed a master you would starve? Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Colin Bischoff, and I'm going to listen to Maggie and introduce myself. So, I'm Colin Bischoff. I'm a second-year PhD student, and I write music fiction. So that's me. And my advice, I was going to say what Eric said because you have a hobby, but Eric already said it. So I'm going to tailor my advice to the people who are teaching, because that's most people. And because most of you will teach composition and will complain about teaching composition, my advice is to stop complaining about teaching composition and actually make it fun. And they will look up to you, right? And you can have fun and make them laugh. And that will unload a lot of the stress. That's my advice. But I'm here to introduce Braiden Ellis, because he graduated from where I got my MFA, which is Georgia College State University. So Braiden Ellis is a fiction writer from Eatonton, Georgia. He is interested in using Southern literature and using Gothic themes in conjunction with queer storytelling. He has one previous publication, a poem titled Surpassing Love of Women, which I've actually read aloud at Georgia College, in the Metropolitan State University Roadrunner Review. So welcome to Braiden Ellis.
Thank you for that introduction, Colin. Okay. So this is a short excerpt from my story, Providence Way, which I actually used on my application for UGA. Thank you, Mom. Everything was great, I say, rising from my seat as she gathers the dishes from the table, carrying them over to the sink. I glance through the kitchen window at the barn outside, a dim light shining through its windows and the cracks of the large door. If you don't mind, I wanted to check out the barn. I hear a dish clatter in the sink amidst the sound of the faucet running, but she doesn't turn toward me. She lets the sink run for a few more seconds, and then she turns it off. Are you sure, Lee? I'm not. I think she knows that. I haven't been in the barn since finding him nearly 5 years before. Yeah, I'll be fine. She wrings her hands, looking toward the living room where Dad sits in darkness aside from the light of the television. I can see the outline of the upright piano against the wall by the entertainment center, barely illuminated by the flashes of the TV screen. I want to go to it, run my fingertips across the keys, but I can't. I won't. Ma turns back to me, nodding once, and I grab Peter's arm, pulling him with me away from the view of the piano. We grab our jackets off the coat rack as we step outside into the dark. Your mom seems nice, Peter says as we walk toward the barn, the only light shining through the windows of the farmhouse and the gas lamps of the barn doors. She's confused, I say. I guess she means well, but she basically lets Dad be a piece of shit, and she just takes it. She didn't step in to stop him when he hit Thomas or when they berated and tortured him at that place. Maybe she's scared of your dad. I stopped, turning to Peter. Thomas was scared of Dad. I was scared of him. We were kids, and Thomas was going through enough at school and just walking around town. He's gone now, and she ain't getting off scot-free in my mind. I don't care if she was scared. Peter doesn't respond, and it's hard to see his face in the dark. I know it sounds like I'm upset at him, and maybe I am. I don't want him to defend my mom, not after she didn't defend us. I look back to the barn at the gas lanterns shining in the night. They almost look like they're breathing. The barn is as alive as ever, living in almost all of my nightmares for the past 5 years. I need to see it again, I say, walking away from Peter. I hear his footsteps behind me and his shallow breaths in the cold air. Once we reach the barn, I pull on the latch, unlocking it and cracking the door open. So close. The closest since Thomas. I slide through the crack, not bothering to open the door completely. The horses are quiet in their stalls, just a few stomps and a huff here and there. Winnie is in the stall next to me, to my right. I remember when Dad used to hoist me up on her back when I was little and walk her around in circles with her lead, and Thomas would wave as he was painting the fence posts around Ma's garden while she pulled weeds. I would hold tight to Winnie's brown mane, brushed through and cleaned every day, and Dad would tell me how I did such a good job as he pulled me down from her back before suggesting we get ice cream at the parlor downtown. I ignore Winnie's stall and walk deeper into the barn. Each step I take kicks up dirt that settles over the white canvas of my shoes. I near the stall all the way in the back corner of the barn, just out of reach of the lantern's glow. I'm slow, purposeful, and terrified to see where I found him again. There's a chill in the air, but I don't pull my jacket tighter around me. I reach back with my right hand and take Peter's. Against his warmth, I can feel how clammy my own hand is. We reach the stall, and I open the door. It's dark, of course, so I can't see much. Peter takes out his phone and turns on the flashlight, shining it around. The ground is covered in old hay, and the air stinks of mildew. This stall hasn't been used since that day. I might even be the first person to enter it in all that time. I don't know if Ma or Dad could force themselves out here. Black mold stretches from the window to the wall opposite of us, like dozens of thin black fingers reaching toward the ceiling. Peter moves his phone, following the mold upward. There it is, the rafter he chose 5 years ago. It bows now, cracked halfway down the center. It could barely support the weight of his body as he hung from the rope he'd taken from the barn loft, where Dad stored some of his tools and construction materials. I spent the morning looking for Thomas when he didn't come get me. We had talked the week before about going to the creek on the other side of the barn to catch crawfish, but he never woke me up. I checked his room, asked Ma and Dad if they'd seen him. Dad said he was probably headed back from the church after his meeting with Pastor David. He went to those meetings all the time then, had to memorize Bible verses and report back that he was getting better. He was sick after all, sick in the head, as Dad said. He didn't look sick to me. I decided to look in the barn, calling his name amidst the horse whinnying and stomping back and forth. They weren't usually so riled up. I made my way toward the back, glancing in each stall, calling out his name. When I reached the last one, a long shadow along the wall guided my eyes up to the rafters, to a figure swaying in the swing breeze. I blinked past the sunlight, young and naive, until the wind turned his face toward me.
Hey everyone, I'm Genevieve Guzman. It's really lovely to see everyone's faces, not new and new. And let's see, I think I'm the elder statesperson now of the creative writing grad students, and I might be the elder of the entire English department graduate student body. So I'll give you more than one piece of advice. First of all, for the 30-somethings, comps may necessitate that you get reading glasses. And then, if you decide to get reading glasses, or any glasses, at the University Vision Clinic, and you're between two frames, choose the more expensive pair, because you're gonna see an undergraduate in the cheaper pair. But my intended piece of advice is that if you find it difficult to write in your first year. This is not unusual. It's such aesthetic chaos entering a PhD. That first year, you're integrating so many different styles, a departure from your previous training, that it can take a while to kick in. So don't worry, don't rush yourself, it'll come back. And I am introducing the lovely Priyadarshini Oshin Gogoi, who is a presidential fellow at the University of Georgia. She is interested in post-colonial South Asian coming-of-age literature, and several of her picture books have won acclaim across India. Many children have told her that she is cool.
Thank you, Genevieve. Hi, everyone. I'm Oshin. I go by Oshin. And today I'll be... Am I just hearing? Oh, no, this works. Today I'll be reading from my novel manuscript, which is a boarding school novel. So this piece is called Changing Rooms. A week before leaving for boarding school, my mother took me to Marwari Patti, into the lane separating the jockey showroom from the Pantaloons mini mall. It was less street and more corridor, a 4 feet wide space lined with makeshift stalls where shopkeepers nested amongst their wares. For most of my life, we had bought underwear from Agarwalji's shop. Agarwalji was a straight-faced, side-part-haired uncle who, for the last 10 years that I'd known him, had shown no signs of aging except for his tufty, thick hair turning from a subtle salt and pepper to completely white. He acted more like a stern Hindi teacher than a lingerie salesman. Agarwalji could take one look at you and tell you your exact bra size. He was the person to inform us when it was time for me to graduate from sports bra to real bra. My mother trusted him tacitly. He had been around since her teenage years and had possibly chosen for her first brassiere. So one evening in that very corridor, when I was almost 13, he looked at me and said, 32B. My mother directed me to go try on the deep purple bra that he had taken out while making the statement. I clambered onto the floor of his shop, which was technically just a collapsible shelf roofed by another shelf and a blue tarp. Then I ducked under the wall of the stacked body care boxes. Body care is like a big bra brand in India. I don't know if it's international. That he sat in front of to try on the bra. It was the perfect fit. And that was how I truly became a woman. Agarwalji not only pronounced bra sizes, but also dictated their designs. My mother would say, "Show some bras though," and he would disappear up the square hatch on his ceiling and throw down different colored bras made of the same thick cotton, all of which was structured without padding or wiring into conical, unbounceable harnesses. If Joan of Arc had been Assamese and alive during our times, this was the exact kind of bra that she would have worn. Same for underwear. My mother would gesture towards me and say, "Panties, please?" And he would throw down a variety of bloomers with frilly elastic bands around the waist and leg openings, always with pictures of Disney characters like Mickey or Daisy Duck printed on the front. The last time we visited Agarwalji, he peered at me over his glasses and detected 34B. A quick go in the changing area confirmed that he was fully correct once again. This time, he displayed a different style of panty for me, the kind that Ma wore, hipster style. In combo packs of assorted red, blue, green, pink with blue flowers, and red with white flowers. That day, for the first time in my life, I bought pajama sets as well. 2 matching sets that came with a combo discount. One of them was made of baby blue cotton with a soft teal collar and blue capri pajamas. The other one was a pink set that was sprinkled with a wildflower embroidery pattern. I had never had a designated sleeping outfit before, having donned for years now my mother's old nighties. I decided that I would wear the floral one on my first night at school. So on my first night at boarding school, as we changed out of our uniforms, Rija Asad, whose cupboard was opposite mine, exclaimed, "What is that? What the hell are you wearing?" Now the whole dorm, in various stages of undress, turned to look at me, with only my pointy bra and pajama bottoms on. None of the other girls was wearing my type of brassiere. Their bras had smooth, glossy cups with underwiring that bloomed their chest into plump half moons. Not one was wearing anything as fortified as mine. As they stared, I began to feel more and more constricted, as if I was being squeezed breast first, never to breathe again. Then Shreya, who was in a long pink t-shirt with her hair in a top knot, said, "My dadi wears that type of bra, bro." Dadi means grandmother. And everyone laughed and resumed changing. I looked around and I noticed another thing. Not one girl was wearing matching pajama suits. Each seemed to be of the large t-shirt and small shorts school of thought. I felt childish and stupid. I pulled out the largest t-shirt I could find and dug my sports shorts out of the laundry bag and slept in that instead.
Hello, I'm David Lumpkin. I'm a third year PhD student, but even though it's only my third year, they've already named a road after me here, so it just shows you what you can accomplish when you set your mind to it. It's really hard to give advice after all the other people have gone because there's only so many things you can say, so I was sitting there thinking about it, and I just, there's this country lyric I'm going to paraphrase. Alcohol might seem like a friend, but it's really a thief. So that's my advice for you. Only for some of you, hopefully. Anyway, John Kuligowski. In Polish, it would be Kuligowski. I'm just proud that I can do that because I'm awful at other names. Is a PhD student in the creative writing program at UGA. Previously, he was assistant genre editor in nonfiction for Prairie Schooner. While I was sitting there, I actually Googled the pronunciation because I thought it was Schooner, but I was doubtful of that because I've messed up pronunciations before. And his work in fiction, poetry, and nonfiction has appeared in a number of venues, both online and in print. All right, welcome, John.
Thanks, David. Okay, so I'm going to be reading an excerpt from a piece called Paisley Vampire, which is itself an excerpt of a longer piece. So here we go. This is not the kind of place where you want to be. Nevertheless, here you are lying atop a mattress on the floor. That's the problem with your life interpreted through the genre of choose your own adventure. An inability to turn back to the page where you make a faulty decision, the utter poverty of counterfactual conditionals. Hours earlier, you'd sequestered yourself beneath a blanket. You'd shuddered the assaults of fluorescent light from the telltale fetal position. And now you can hear the shuffling of requisite Halloween orange clogs. By the time you finally decided to drag your sorry ass out of the makeshift bed, the guys are swarming the commons area. It must be early afternoon, and the rusted fog in your brain still hasn't burnt away. You'd known that you had to get up at some time, sooner than later actually, if for no other reason to relieve the fullness in your bladder fast becoming a dull ache. After some deliberation within your scratchy synthetic cocoon, you'd landed on the idea of counting to 30. You did it. Then you did it again. Once more for good measure. This is called stalling, and the realization that it will not help you lands with the ponderous delicacy of the drugged rhinoceros. Out of your chrysalis and off you go, shambling first to the bathroom, then to where most of the bodies have coalesced, to where the TV is, to where you find they've made a loose organic shape, something like a dead brittle star cast upon a beach. You decide to loiter toward the back of one of the broken appendages as if you belonged. Some of the guys stand arm crossed, others seated, and nobody seems to notice you. No surprise, since you came in the dead of night. You look to where they're looking and find a case study in daytime television programming. In terms of taste, you don't understand. Is this really such a draw? So mesmerizing? You query the faces of the guys around you and find a preponderance of blank expectation. A telenovela has just ended, a game show begun. The rules are unsettled except among those few who speak Spanish, and they're not letting anyone know. While you wait for an answer, as if the screen were an oracle, a young woman in a very tight shirt begins to jump excitedly before the show's host. All the interested eyes go vacant, with guileless wonder, pupils dilating, and you experience an aha moment. This may not be equivalent to, say, hearing a Delphic Sibyl, but honestly, there is some technique involved here, some art. The smoothness by which the woman transforms into an object is such that you feel a spray of leftover transcendence hit your brow, like spit from an unhoused man on a Las Vegas street. You're pleased with yourself, and in that self-satisfaction, the world seems to open to you, with warmth and ardor, but not too much. Things are mostly calm, and why shouldn't they be? We're all objects amid a universe of objects. The place isn't really that bad, you think? Because it hasn't been such a very long time since you've seen a real woman in a very tight shirt, you broaden your gaze to take in whatever other wonders may await you here. Perhaps this will be the aha moment, and the previous one was mere confusion or a pale representation, and in fact, that's what it is. As you notice the other guys at the far tables and benches bolted to the floor, furiously crocheting, caught up in an intensity that you can only apprehend as a kind of subverted violence. You glimpse your mottled hand, fingers trembling ever so slightly, and your eyes creep up to the hem of your orange sleeve, fall to the pockmarked crook of your elbow, which you touch and absently begin to caress, and you remember the late-night phlebotomist at the hospital unhelpfully commenting, "Looks like somebody's been busy," just before she'd inserted a needle for the peremptory blood test. You sit down, away from the gathering, to think, to assess. The sealed concrete floor has a glossy sheen, which under stronger lights would be too much. The walls are a monotonous color of potato soup, and so your thoughts. Here's the deal, the voice narrating your life says. What brought you here was something purely aesthetic. Unfortunately, that something was animal. A jailhouse blues. Time goes by, as it's wont to do anywhere. Here in the country of the Gerasenes, however, you simply wait. You wait for mealtime, for the call about commissary. You wait for someone to tell you that you can leave. You even wait for a herd of swine to dive into the distant sea. On all accounts, you have no such luck. The meals are all but inedible. No one has put money on your books. You won't be exiting anytime soon. And the swine are here to stay, those ocean breezes far removed from the Chinook winds which buffet the outer walls. Thanks all.
I'm a 6th year in the PhD program and a fiction writer mostly. So I'm going to introduce Nik Moore. But first, my piece of advice, which is hard because there's been a lot of good advice. But I would say try to stay connected to other art forms, aside from books. Because you're going to be reading so much literature, theory, criticism, both joyous and heavy. And I think it can be kind of hard to lose track of your creativity, surprisingly, in the program. So I'd say go to the art museum on campus. The 7th floor of the library is where all the art books are. Just go and get a random one and look at it. Go to a movie. There's a really good indie theater in town, Cine. Go to a play, what have you. I think it, brings a little spark back. Okay, on to Nik. Nik Moore is a writer, editor, and graduate of the MFA program for creative writing at the University of Montana. Their poems have appeared in or are forthcoming from Orion, Poetry Northwest, a literary field guide to Northern Appalachia, and elsewhere. Please welcome Nik.
Thank you. I'm gonna try to stay under 5 minutes, and I'm curious to find out if I go over, will I be played off stage, a la Academy Awards, so we'll see. These first two poems are written for my grandparents. Impression of a dining room with CHF. I make a lasagna. I say, put your weight on me. I remember cattails guarding the pond. I remember not knowing their protection. The pond eroded anyway. The floor fell out from beneath. I say, take my arm. I say, let me take your arm. I say, put your weight on me. The lasagna doesn't keep in the car. I preheat the oven. I broil the cheese. You say, stop fussing at me. We're always fussing. With your pills, you take a can of diet. It is a temperate day. I was meant to walk a bit. I look down at your feet. Your ankles turn in. At first, I think you're dancing. I say, will you put your weight on me? You say, my legs won't work. You say, when I get to heaven, first thing I'm going to ask Jesus is to let me run. This is just called Bobby. Bobby cusses the nightshade, the black-eyed peas. Bobby cusses the neighbor and his boys who follow daylight savings and pack in for lunch an hour early. Bobby watches as I sweat the onions, deglaze the pan, simmer in soy and honey. Bobby drives a dragster off a cliff, lodges in a tree, breaks his humerus. Bobby slaps his knee, Bobby slaps his knees. Bobby fidgets. Bobby pays me $50 to transfer his contacts from Post-it to flip phone. Bobby makes me take the money. Bobby crawls north and norther. Bobby wakes one day in his 40s with a hacking cough and gives up the nightshade then and there. Bobby rubs backer gum from his skin, wets and pills it between his palms. Bobby weeps before open heart surgery. Weeps in church when the preacher talks of love. Weeps at home recounting a sad story of two old folks curled up in the cold, holding hands, packed between quilts, no money for oil to warm them. Bobby flings a fistful of beans into the pit when he reaches the end of the row and his daddy's plow is turned east. Bobby builds things. Bobby builds things. Bobby grieves the lives his children could have. Bobby loves his granddaughter's mean goat. Bobby thinks she's crazy, but the goats remind him of his daddy who said it ain't a farm without a goat. Bobby meets his fourth great-grandson the day before his daddy's birthday. Bobby weeps into the crown. Bobby drinks beer and feels it on the drive home. Bobby buys 3 Costco cakes and a honey-baked ham. Bobby cusses sciatica and his prostate. Bobby loves. Bobby loves. Bobby watches the news and golf and gunsmoke and votes for Democrats. Bobby buys a busted-up old car and hangs a sign in the window, Cave City or Bust. Bobby makes a pot of beans with the ham bone. Bobby kisses his wife the Christmas she outlives her cancer. Bobby makes a roast. Bobby listens to the birds and sings. Bobby sings. Bobby sings. Bobby takes the late bus in from E-Town, sprints past the haunted barn on Old 31W. Bobby rides into town on the wood runner of his neighbor's Ford. Bobby feels the wind in his teeth. This one's not for my grandparents. Cetacean surfacing behavior and other ways of knowing. 1. You there with the ocean-sized face, not in that it is vast, but in that it is so much of you. How often do you anchor your body calculated against the moving mind of the sea? Sometimes you look as if you count your life in buoyed trysts with fresh air, and what it must be like to bear the weight of all those free, swirling bodies. 2. Gray whales most often mate in groups of 3 or more, a buoyancy thing, a body's floating ever farther thing, an oceanic love, the way an assisting bull will prop itself into the cow's back and thus into another bull. They'll swap, mating several times in the afternoon, 100-some feet of shudder and shift of a dominant fin breaking the surface and invitation. 3. All of this not unlike you. You there, you are not the cow, no, and you are neither fin-flashing bull nor the milder one with patience. You in some way are all three at once, because when you wet your toes, you are both breathing and held breath. You are a helixing mass, spy hopping for greater understanding of prospect and positionality, and then a subversion of self. You're rolling, guided wholly by the movement of the cow, the drifting of the bull, the pull that necessitates a careful knowing of everything all the time, and then rearranging all such knowing. 4. You, ocean-faced cradle of cooperative conception, you will return to a shallow lagoon and bring forth waves of birth. You, sky-bodied lover, will roll over change and make your migration again and again. Thank you.
This is my 6th year, and I'm not a non-new student. But I would start with the advice first. Jamie asked me. I think everybody knows my name. My name is Aruni Kashyap. Nice to meet you. When Jamie asked me if I would introduce anybody, I said anyone. Everybody is so amazing this year. And she asked me to introduce Asna, so it's my pleasure. Asna, my advice to you and everyone is that please have a life outside UGA as well. It is so important. And as a 6th year non-student, I can tell you that has been very vital in sustaining life. And by outside UGA, I just don't mean having fun with colleagues and students and friends from the department, but making connections outside the department. Like go to the farmer's market, or go to some events, make new connections. Go to the drag shows in Go Bar, or other places. I don't know if they still have them in Go Bar, but I used to go there a lot. I used to have so much fun. So do everything. And also, Atlanta is really exciting. Please, if you can manage to go there. There are lots of wonderful things happening all the time. So that's my advice, because that's what I do in order to enjoy my time here. Asna Nusrat, she, her, is an immigrant writer from Karachi, Pakistan, with an MFA in fiction from Arizona State University. She mostly writes fiction, non-fiction, and translations in English and Urdu that have been published on the 1,000 Languages website and Lakir magazine. Her novel In Progress explores the strangeness of feminine joy, the company of objects, and the private life of a woman's mind. Asna.
Bear with me through the mic adjustment. Okay. Thank you so much for that very generous introduction, Aruni. I'm going to read from an essay titled Fly, which is about the first flight I took as an immigrant to the US. It's an excerpt, so it might not make total sense. Fly. They say a lot of new things happen when you're on a long journey. Things that fill you with wonder. Of all the wondrous things I could have seen during my 27-hour journey to the US in July of 2021, I saw the fly trapped in my airplane window. It was stuck in the vacuum between the glass panes on the transatlantic flight that took off from Qatar for Houston, Texas. It was there when I slept, and when I woke, and when I ate, and when I slept again. Every time I looked, it was right there, turned away into the light, watching the sinking skies below. Never once did it move a degree to the left or to the right, and I wondered if it was a fly-shaped illusion and not a being. I wondered how long flies could go without food and water. I wondered if the window panes weren't in fact vacuum insulated, so it could breathe. If I'm being honest, I didn't feel the wish to slip a breadcrumb or a morsel of fly food into the window, even if I could. All I wanted was for it to turn around once and show me that it knew I was there, waiting, watching. But I didn't have the energy to contemplate the intentions of the fly. I was too preoccupied with being the object of agitation of over 100 passengers in the economy cabin who had to rely on the same 2 lavatories as I. To my knowledge, you need to relieve yourself at least 3 times in a 17-hour flight, and that too if you have superhuman bladder control or simply nibble on food and water to stay alive. I wish I could be like that, but I was weak, hungry, and bleeding. The sober choices of avoiding a shared flight lavatory that hadn't been aired or cleaned in a while was not an option. As the designated sick person on the flight, who occupies the restroom for extended periods while 5 people fidget in line, I was asking for hate. A lot of it. But wait, this is not a litany of complaints. There are things you need to know to get this rant about the fly, the loo, and the angry economy flyers. Make note. 1. With post-dengue virus bleeding leaking through my heavy flow sanitary pads and staining my clothes, I was exhausted from the cleaning and woozy from the blood loss. A lavatory that can barely fit a skinny person like me is not the best place for a change of clothes, stain removal, sanitary upkeep, and more. It only makes you wish your uterus hadn't decided to mutilate itself 40,000 feet above ground. 2. There was a lot of getting used to the agitated, yes ma'am, of course, I'll help you in a minute, from the flight attendants when I requested for ice to soothe my purple-green, very pretty hematoma bruises, courtesy of the venous catheter that punctured my arm several times at the hospital. I could have explained to her my reasons for pressing the call button when no one else was complaining as much as I. I could have waved my purple hand so she would notice my excuse, but all passengers had paid the same sum to be where we were, and I did not reserve the right to extra privileges. 3. During the 1 month I was in the ICU before this flight, my body had to rely on fluid swimming through an IV to keep me alive. Still in recovery post-COVID, post-dengue, it required more hydration to continue recovering. But I had to get used to drinking minimally because I had colonized the lavatories enough. In flight logic, it's called drinking for pleasure. And you're an ass if you indulge because you're all part of a collective bladder consciousness, and everyone must take a fair share of lavatory time. Even a sick pass has an expiration date, but my body was shutting down fast, almost at the risk of post-infection organ failure. I was experiencing what I call IV withdrawals. To combat that, because I could no longer be an ICU queen and have food fed to my body, I had to drink hard to stay alive. Since I didn't have a tube constantly supplying goodies to my system, water gave me a fighting chance. And after the remedies my mother had tried during the hospital phase, like the papaya leaf drink that tasted like death, this was an improvement. 10 days ago in the intensive care, my blood platelets had gone down to 25,000. The normal count for healthy adults is between 150,000 and 450,000. But while your body fights a virus like the deadly dengue, it can drop below 100K. Below 50K is a bad way to be alive. They call family. Prepare them for the worst. I was at 25% battery life. It was clear that I was running out of options to survive, so papaya juice was less of a choice then. And the only reason I got away without dying was with the help of my old friend needled into my arm that was juicing me up, keeping me from shrinking into a raisin. So yes, I accepted the daggers coming at me because I needed to survive. I was despised by the flight attendants after my 10th call for help in the first hour because the vegetable life on a hospital bed was no longer an option. Going back was no longer an option. It was fly or die, baby. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Abhijit Sharma, and I am a third-year PhD student in the creative writing program. Advice, I asked the same question to Dr. John Lowe, who I miss every day, that what should I, give me advice, and he said, drink plenty of water, and I think that's my advice, and I borrowed it. Okay, so it's my pleasure to introduce my friend Sirsti Ray. Sirsti Ray is a poet from the eastern coast of India. Her poems work at the intersection of sound to body and the cosmos. Please, a round of applause for her.
Just say.
That's recording. That's the recording.
Meta recording. Thank you, Abhijit. It means a lot being introduced by you. Okay. I've never done this before. The objective of these poems is to have bodily experiences, which I hope that all of us have. I think of them as pieces in a music album, storyline wise. This part that I'll read now seems to me like it'll come towards the end of the thing. The smell of a cotton wick burning black sesame oil. Far across ink fields where places and places of page unbecome a little above the earth, in fluid flames and beyond, the vultures cannot tell night from day. Awkwardly left in the depths of the darkest clouds, light mirrors oars of silver by salty waters. In July dreams the hoarse heart daggers of lightning, and a black buck, forlorn, apprehends God. Inexhaustible plentitude, when one night I replaced good with fish bones from a cat's belly. Is a field of grass meeting the blue sky at the bounding. A blade's back disappears in glares broadening. Is really excuse furthered, places get taken in for contrast. A hard rain comes upon small ends constantly. The next one is called Sparrow Call, or the Unit of Things. This making will detach noise nits, count the moments, stellar events, the music of broad daylight harrowing, how dark is the absence of light at the perimeter. Totality is thirst, the sound of first light on starburst line, luminaire in meat, frail and tense, tinctured one is a drop of extremity in the breaking, sustaining, nailing sparrows by tall trees. Contracted forms. Tain lifted phosphorescence frond currents in his hemline. Were you wood, what would your sacred sight sound like? Tain crossed the object mountains. Are you dying? The big old woman star tumbled like war baby. Time, fronds lift unladen to make it happen. Chance. Is the body a wood? Age. Tain travels lines out the big old woman's mouth, around her ends, darkening, suffusing a comet's behind. Satellite. Is there more than one mirror in this castle? Mountain, minor, Mars, marauder, Marletti's song, when the moon disappearing on the foothills of sea performs as itself at birth. Coefficients of meat, food in the fog, where are you? Marletti's song, the spiraling sound. A donkey brays long past midnight in slums of people smoking fires across the rolling hills, really, a murmuring cistern so silent. Is a cry for the body making it? Is there a math to match a violet sky, a searching patch in a moving train? Owls return to their branch sloppy with rain. Clouds have the speech in owl time. Storms, street, saltpeter, skin. Antagonist love. Far away traffic rings of asphalt cuts through a sea of dark. Calotropis gigantea, a band of bones dipped in radium. Plastic and hundred-faced, a blue crystal ball harkens the rear and colors him. Violence is a form of worship, a lay of vacuity. The skin dips behind his ears where crown flowers craft a remote paradise island. Mating is for food. When the spice winds bring the trade ships back, delirious vapors of tobacco ruminate on the haystack at night, and the delta where saline fish suicide embosses Kalos, the beautiful princess, who weeps their keels adrift. Past the single arrow village, sting of sap. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Maxine Berkland. My advice to you is, you might be feeling overwhelmed right now, and that's perfectly normal. Just take the time to get your bearings and, kind of slowly let yourself ramp it up. Also, you can get really good Ethiopian food at Manawida's on the east side, so... I'm relatively cheap, let's not. It's my immense pleasure to introduce Rahad Abir. Rahad Abir is a writer from Bangladesh. His debut novel, Bengal Hound, won the Georgia Author of the Year Award for literary fiction. Please, everyone, give him a round of applause.
Thank you for the kind introduction. I'm going to read an excerpt from my novel. Maybe a little bit of background would help to understand the context of the section I'm going to read. I'm not sure you follow news. Recently in Bangladesh, student protesters, they ousted the prime minister. So the prime minister, she had to flee the country, and now she's in India. So sort of the similar things happen in this novel. So in this novel, students they are protesting against the military ruler, Ayub Khan. So it's set in East Pakistan when Bangladesh was still Pakistan. So basically when the British left, there were two countries, India and Pakistan. So Bangladesh went with Pakistan because of the religious. Most of the people were the Muslims. So it didn't work because both cultures are different. Anyway, so students here they are protesting against the martial military ruler Ayub Khan, and he had to eventually step down within a month. The same thing, similar thing happened. In 2024, within a month or over a month, Sheikh Hasina, she had to step down, she had to flee. Anyway, thank you for being patient with me. Sorry. In the novel, so Shalim Majumdar, he's the main character. He and his girlfriend, they are going to get married at a marriage register because they couldn't get married in their village because Shelley is Hindu and his girlfriend is Muslim. The marriage register office was a small corrugated iron structure with a large veranda at the front. The door was wide open. Inside, a decrepit old table. 5 shabby chairs kept it company. 2 wooden frames hung on the wall. Allahu calligraphy in the right frame. An image of Kaaba Sharif in the left. It turned out the Qazi lived inside and used the veranda as his office. Shelley gave a small cough to announce their presence. In response, a face peeped out. The man was clearly in pajamas and an undershirt. 2 minutes later, the Qazi appeared dressed up. His face, bearded and dyed with henna, was broad. He wore a knitted skull cap, but his eyes faced Shelley. They were shifty and looked strangely at Roxana. The Qazi was chewing palm leaves. He motioned Shelley to the front chairs to sit. Want to wait? His jaw moved noisily as he spoke, but his eyes were still on Roxana. Shelley nodded, and in that instant realized the Qazi was cross-eyed. The Qazi pulled out a chair at his side, settled down and ran his fingers through his henna-dyed beard. Roxana stood behind Shelley. He glanced at her, and they both sat down. The Qazi started probing. It was more like an interview. Shelley answered, evading a direct eye contact with the Qazi. He told him there was love between himself and Roxana, but their marriage was opposed on religious grounds. He now wanted to convert to Islam in order to marry her. The Qazi leaned back in his chair. You have two witnesses? He inquired. Shelley did not understand. The Qazi explained. According to Islam, two males were required as witnesses to perform a marriage. For this, Shelley was unprepared. He asked the Qazi if he could find them some witness. The Qazi licked his lips, now reddened with pan juice. His cross-eyed flicked between Roxana and Shelley. Then he stood up, told them to wait, and went out. A civil marriage was another option and would not require Shelley's conversion to Islam. Initially, he had preferred this idea, but the British-made law required the bride to be at least 18 years old, and Roxana was 16. Therefore, that option was not available to them. The Qazi returned with two older men, and their clothing suggested he had found them at a nearby mosque. The two men sat next to Shelley. Becoming a Muslim was much easier than Shelley had thought. It all came down to saying a simple phrase, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. There is no true God but Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. Saying this, one became a Muslim. Thus, Shelley became a Muslim. Following the conversion, the Qazi insisted that he take a new name, a Muslim name. Shelley refused. With his little knowledge about Islam, he pointed out that this was not obligatory. What really did matter was belief, not names. Moreover, his last name, Majumdar, was common both in Hindu and Muslim households. The Qazi yielded. When all the due process and paperwork were over, the Qazi coughed, cleared his throat. This is embarrassing, he began. Actually, I don't know how to put it, but I feel it's my Islamic duty to inform you. Actually, you know, a Muslim man must be circumcised. For this, Shelley was also unprepared. His eyes flickered under the Qazi's gaze, as if the piercing gaze were inspecting his lingam between his legs. His shoulders hunched and unhunched. Partition again, he thought. The male organ was the main point of the partition. India had been partitioned on the grounds of circumcision. That was the issue Jinnah, Nehru, Gandhi had fought for. And thus, the two nations were born, one circumcised, another uncircumcised. Not to worry, the Qazi said, actually, for this type of case, I have a special arrangement. Just a few days of bed rest, not a big deal. You have become a Muslim. You ought to do it as early as possible. Roxana sneezed, almost inaudibly. Yes, I'm aware of that. Shelley replied first. He wished Roxana were not here. He interlocked his fingers, rubbed the right thumb across the left thumb, and the left across the right, harder and harder. You are an educated man. Actually, you know, circumcision has lots of benefits. Science has proven it's good for a healthy sexual life. Yes, I know all that. His face tightened. Jumping to his feet, Shelley drew the wallet from his pocket. He paid the Qazi's fees and left a tip as well. Then he strode off with Roxana. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. That was really fantastic. One more round of applause for everyone. I think I have some words of advice. One, If you're going to the hidden gem, text me. 2, ask each other questions. 3, don't try and reinvent the wheel. Everyone here has suffered before you, so mix and mingle and start asking questions. Yes. 4, stick around and have some fun. And 5, let's all give a hand for Jamie Mays, who put all of this together. Woo! Without Jamie, I would have quit. Trust me. Yeah, seriously. So thank you all, and let's just hang out and then get to know each other. Thank you.